You're listening to the Vol Basketball Fever Podcast, your source for news, discussion, and debates about the Vols and Lady Vols basketball programs. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and everywhere else podcasts are found. Hello, everyone, and welcome in to another episode of the Vol Basketball Fever Podcast. I am Nathanael Rutherford, joined by Gene Henley, and we're here to bring another episode of the podcast here, and we got a lot to talk about, so we'll get into it here in just a second. Thank you all for tuning in. If you're listening on your Apple device, listening on Spotify, Google Podcasts, where you're listening to, if you're on YouTube and watching this video / listening to it, thank you all so much. This is going to be the last time Gene and I do a podcast in 2021, and I just want to say you guys have made 2021 a fantastic year for the podcast. It was obviously we rebranded back in late February, early March, just to do Tennessee basketball and Lady Vols, and you guys have helped make this year a fantastic one. Looking very much forward to 2022 without what all that brings, and I guess more on that in a minute, and we'll give some thanks and stuff at the end of the podcast. But again, just thank you all. If it's your first time listening, welcome in. You chose a great time to come into the podcast because we're starting SEC play here for both the Vols and Lady Vols, and Gene and I were recording this before the Lady Vols game on Thursday, but a lot of you will probably listen to it afterwards. But don't worry, if you are a Lady Vol fan, we will have a Lady Vol specific podcast for the Lady Vol Basketball Fever podcast, which again is in the same feed as this one, so you don't need to subscribe to anything new. But we'll have that on, I believe, sometime Friday to talk about Lady Vols taking on Alabama. And hopefully, Gene, they have a better result than the men's team when they took on Alabama, because the men's team went down to Tuscaloosa, a place where Tennessee has historically not had very much success, and lost 73-68, a very close one. And Gene, to me, this game, we should be talking about the fact that Tennessee took a shorthanded roster without John Fulkerson, without Kennedy Chandler, because those two, it was revealed, I guess, about an hour or so, maybe an hour and a half before tip-off on Wednesday night, that those two were not going to be available to play because of COVID issues. You know, both the guys tested positive after Christmas break, and I believe Rick Barnes said that Fulkerson hadn't even been practicing with the team for basically the whole week, then practicing leading up this game, and I think Chandler tested positive on the 26th, so the day after Christmas, so then he wasn't practicing after that either. So the other guy, I don't think, made the trip potentially. I know Kennedy didn't. I don't remember if Fulkerson made the trip or not, but neither guy was in action on Wednesday night. So we should be talking about how this undermanned Tennessee team had a different, pretty good amount of guys step up and play some really good roles in expanded minutes, especially guys like Uros, Plavsic, who I thought had his best game as a Vol, which maybe not saying too much, but I thought he played really well in his 20 minutes he played on the court there. I thought Olivier Nkamhoua played well. I thought Sakai Ziegler in his first career start as a Vol, he made some really good plays. You could see maybe fresh mistakes being made by him, but I thought he played well and stepped up in a role where he's not ever had to start in college before. But instead, a lot of the talk has been about the end of the game because of a missed wide open three by Victor Bailey Jr., and he wasn't the only Vol to miss a wide open three in the game. And Gene, my big gripe for this team, and I've said it on Twitter multiple times now, is I feel like maybe I'm biased because I watch every UT game and watch every game in every other school, but this team misses more wide open 3-pointers than I think I've seen any team ever miss in college basketball. But besides the point, Victor Bailey Jr. misses that three with 35 or so seconds to go. It was 70-68 Alabama after we saw a flurry of points. You had Jaden Shackelford make a really nice bucket to put Alabama up 67-65 with 1:02 to go. And then Olivier Nkamhoua goes down and drains a three to make it 68-67 Tennessee. And then Keon Ellis comes back not even 10 seconds later and responds with a made three as well to make it 70-68 with 46 seconds to go. And then Tennessee gets possession, goes down, and I don't recall exactly what happened. I think it was, the way the pass happened, I think the guy who passed it to Bailey, which I think was probably Ziegler or Vescovy, drew the defense. I don't know exactly what happened, but there wasn't anybody within 10 feet of Victor Bailey Jr. He could have sat there and dribbled the ball and still not been touched, just not been guarded for a three. As a corner three, misses it, and he finished the game. He made one early, which I think gave him some confidence, which we talked about. He's not ever really afraid to shoot the three, but he made one early and then missed the rest of his shots. Finished the game 1 of 4 for 3, 2 of 7 overall from the floor, 2 of 2 from free throw line. He misses it, and people, understandably, were pretty mad about why was Victor Bailey Jr. in there with the struggles he's had this year and not Justin Powell, who is seemingly a better shooter, a more consistent shooter. And in this game, he played 15 minutes. Bailey played 20. Powell, in those 15 minutes, he was 1 of 2 from 3, 2 of 3 overall, 5 points, 3 rebounds, 2 steals. Bailey was 7 points and 1 rebound and 1 assist. So, Gene, I know I tend to skew more positive on the podcast and everything, and I've mentioned before I have complaints about Rick Barnes, but overall I think he's a great coach, obviously, and tend to kind of defect towards him and say he knows what he's doing. In this case, I understand where everybody's coming from, and I agree with them on this one. I don't understand. Maybe it's because he's been on the team for 3 years. The year he redshirted, he was here last year, and obviously this is his 3rd year, so maybe you wanted to have seniority out there on the last couple of minutes of the game. But I would have personally have had Justin Powell in over Victor Bailey Jr. for this instance, and I really think moving forward after that miss, I think they end up taking Victor Bailey Jr. out of the game. If I'm looking at the play-by-play, he comes out not too long after that, I think, and I don't know if Powell came in or not, but I know Bailey subbed out. But Gene, I think moving forward, if you're Rick Barnes, you gotta put in Justin Powell more, and I just don't. I know we saw Victor Bailey play 2 minutes against Arizona. I'm not saying he has to only ever play a minute or two in a game, but I'm ready to see more Justin Powell and less Victor Bailey, because he just doesn't have it this year. I don't know what it is about this year specifically. He's had one game where he lit it up from 3, and every other game this year he has really struggled. And I 100% understand people questioning Rick Barnes and why he had Victor Bailey Jr. in there late. So I've talked a lot here. I'll let you get your thoughts, but I think moving forward, if you're Rick Barnes, I don't see how you don't have more Justin Powell and less Victor Bailey.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is just probably just it's weird, but I think it's just maybe a comfort level that that I think Barnes kind of just has with Bailey in some clutch moments and some key moments. I'm looking at the second half, and for what it's worth, like, Bailey was productive in the second half. I mean, all of his production came in the second half. Now obviously there's some negatives, because the kid had 4 fouls in 10 minutes, which is quite impressive to me. sort of Vescovy. All the guards were getting fouls, and so I don't know. Unfortunately, I missed that last little sequence. Long day. Ended up falling asleep about 3 to 5 minutes ago, which is amazing, because that's usually when people are most awake, and that's when I dozed off. But it's I don't know. It's one of those things to me that there's just a certain comfort level that that Barnes has kind of developed with Bailey in some clutch moments. And there were some good moments. I know I saw him hit the 3. I can't remember the second shot he hit, but I know he had the real nice slot pass to Olivier for the dunk in the second half as well. So there was some good playmaking.
Yeah, the second shot that Bailey hit was one that was a really good pass that looked like it was going to Uros, and ended up making it to Bailey as both were coming to the basket.
Yeah, I do remember that now. Yeah, I do. I remember that now. It wasn't all horrible, right. And unfortunately, the reality is, the truth is, it's a make or miss sport. So if Bailey makes that shot, nobody's saying we want to see more of Justin Powell.
Right.
It's more the fact that he missed the shot that everybody is now clamoring for Powell, who did have a decent first half, but pretty much had 6 non-existent minutes in the second half. I don't even remember the time that he was in, but in those 6 minutes, they were outscored by 4 points in just those 6 minutes. And look, there's no perfect measurement to what transpires. Maybe Barnes thought that Bailey offered something more defensively, because all their guards were getting cooked. All of Tennessee's guards were in foul trouble. So maybe you decide to go with the more um, athletic option. I don't know. I think Bailey's taller. I'm sorry, not Bailey, but Powell is taller. Might not be quite as athletic, but he's at the very least equally as good of a shooter. At the very least, and you could argue he's actually better. But I would probably argue that he's actually better, a better just spot up shooter. But like I don't think that I don't think you're going to get a lot of pushback from me as far as they need to be playing Bailey more and Powell less. If everybody wants Bailey, if everybody wants Bailey out and Powell in, okay, I 1,000% get that because I understand it. But part of the reason why everybody is frustrated is more because he missed a shot, and not nearly as much about, to me, the conversation is, you mentioned it earlier, Uros played his best ever game.
Yeah.
Best ever game in that uniform. When you look, there's no perfect measurement for, how important the guy is on the court. Some people will just simply look at points and rebounds and blah, 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 blah. I like to kind of look at some of these other more advanced measurements and kind of make understand stuff that way. Tennessee was outscored by 9 points when Uros wasn't in the game. He played half the game. Mm-hmm. Quite literally, 19-23 he was in, 20-37 he was out. That's good. And that's a guy that, a lot of people wrote off. I questioned if he'd ever contribute there. I always wondered, I knew that people weren't getting, that Tennessee wasn't getting what people thought they were getting in a 7-2 kid. But what I've watched out of Uros is the fact that kid has quit playing, I think, to the crowd, which I think is, early on in his career, he was so excited about being wanted. There was the hashtag Free Uros movement on social media, and I think that was really fun and exciting for him. And so he didn't necessarily focus as much on just becoming a better basketball player. And then, of course, you have the COVID year, which always affects everybody's production. It does. It affected everybody's production last year, everybody's improvement last year, their development. But you've seen an offseason of development, and Uros is a good player and a serviceable piece. Again, the kid, it's not like the kid's going to ever be like a guy that's going to give you 20 and 14. He's not that guy. But, what I'm just looking at just his raw numbers. He didn't make a shot, but he, 6 of 8 at the free throw line, including the one that he banked in that I love that he banked in. Wasn't that him that banked in a free throw?
Uros, yeah, he did.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I love that he banked in a free throw because it's just, it's like the hardest thing to do in a game is actually bank in a free throw. He didn't try, but he did. He had 9 rebounds. If that's not a career high, it's pretty close. He affected the game, man, and that's all you can really ask for. Like Josiah, +1 in 33 minutes. Those are little things. Sometimes you can't base everything. It's hard because you want to win the game. I get that. And I'm not about to argue that or dispute that. But when you're looking back on the game and you're trying to, put things in perspective and take things into context, you go down there without an all-conference forward who is an invaluable piece of your team. You go down there without your point guard. I don't think he was as important to not have, if that makes any sense, because
yeah,
I don't think there's much difference between what he and Ziegler do. They're both freshmen, so it's not like you have a particular advantage to having Chandler other than the fact that he's a 5-star to Ziegler's 3 or whatever it was. He's better, Chandler's better finishing at the basket. Ziegler, I think, has a toughness about him that is impressive. I watched that game, and what I was watching and what I was thinking was when he was playing was, oh, this kid ain't rattled in the least bit. I don't know. Again, I watched the games. When I watch games, I try to watch it without the sound on because I don't want to be influenced by what the announcers are saying. Who were the announcers yesterday?
It was Carl Ravitch and Jimmy Dykes, which people were having a lot of. I guess I wasn't. I'm never a huge fan of Ravitch calling basketball games because he's much better at baseball. I just don't think he does as good job at basketball. But Jimmy Dykes usually does an okay job, though.
And Dykes is like a Tennessee guy.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, obviously he's not from here, but I'm just saying that's a guy who will always kind of tout the Rick Barnes model, like when I've met him and talked to him. But I try to just watch. And so when I was watching like the second half of that game, I'm like, okay, I don't think things are going to be much different if you had Chandler in there because she's going to be making some of the same mistakes. I watched the Arizona game last week. I mean, if John Fulkerson's not there, then the talk is how your freshman point guard forced a shot with like less than a minute in the game and got it blocked. Like that's the whole discussion if they lose that Arizona game. Because he drove to the basket and forced a shot that he probably didn't have to take.
Yep.
Instead of getting it to somebody else. So I don't think you're getting anything more or less. You may get a little more scoring or whatever, but you've got two freshman point guards. But you didn't have Fulkerson, which I think is a huge loss. That's, to me, the bigger loss, and it's not even about points or rebounds, because I think that, look, a lot of his 24 points in that Arizona game was a lot of hustle and just want to, as opposed to everybody else. Like I think he'll consistently give Tennessee like 10 to 12 points, but his value is not points, it's just in presence. And not having that, so to me, I'm like you, like the story is the effort. The story is the performance. You had guys making shots. Josiah hits the three in the corner. Unfortunately, it's the only shot he makes because now apparently I don't know what's happened to him, but he's now in his mind like a pure 3-point shooter.
Yeah, I think he needs to change his approach because I agree with you. I don't know why he's only just taking threes basically now.
Yeah, I mean 7 of his 8 shots last night were threes, and it's not like they were completely out of the game and they were trying to shoot their way back into it. It was consistently like they're up 10 points in the first half, and then obviously the big run by Alabama, but that was a back and forth game, and I'm like,
yep.
Okay, this is and look, I don't know. Like it's not I don't think it's an aggression thing because you see moments where Josiah does things that that you're like, oh wow, he'll get a dunk or something along those lines where you're just like, oh wow, here he comes, and then it doesn't necessarily build on itself. I'm looking here, man. 50 of his 68 shots this year are threes.
I was just looking at that. He's only taken 18 two-pointers this year, which is actually less than Victor Bailey, and he's played about 50 more minutes than Victor Bailey too. He's taken 5 more. Well, that's more impressive the fact that he's only taken 5 more shots than Victor Bailey, and he's only played Victor's played in all 12 games. Josiah's, I was about to say he's only played in over 10 minutes more per game. Yep.
Josiah has only taken 5 more shots and 7 more threes. Tennessee is a good free throw shooting team. Shoot 70% on the year. I'm pretty sure they were solid last night at the line. I mean, they were 17 to 20. You've got to find ways to get to the line more. Like Ziegler, 7 of 8.
Yep.
Uros, 6 of 8. Both Olivier and Bailey, 2 for 2. But, you can't settle. They didn't settle as much last night, 29 threes out of 63 shots. So that's still almost half of your shots. You've got to find a way to start getting into the lane more. And I think that's why Barnes harps so much on getting the ball into the post because, there aren't that many guys that can do the sort of stuff to kind of get yourself to the basket. Obviously, Ziegler did it last night. Uros just did it just because of his work rate and his work ethic and just constantly working in his 20 minutes to get fouled, to get to the line. I like the toughness of Uros last night. There was a little, the rebound he grabbed over, number 10. I'll just say number 10. Y'all know who he is. Everybody in the podcast knows what I'm talking about. The 7-foot freshman kid.
Yeah, Charles Bediako. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they got their arms tangled and Uros kind of shook free and they called a foul on the kid. I'm like, that's what you need. That's the type of stuff that shows that kid can help. And as you start talking about the rotation, who can help? Can Huntley Hatfield, can he continue what he did? I mean, he looked lost in the second half, but in his time in the first half, that's 8 points. Like I mean, in a lot of cases, you get comfortable against guys who are. If you're like a guy like Huntley Hatfield, I said the same thing about Josiah 2 years ago. You get comfortable going up against guys who are, like in college when you're going up against a guy who's like a 5-star freshman like you, because y'all been playing each other. Like there's a comfort level that you can develop. So I'm not surprised that Huntley Hatfield played well because he played against a lot of these guys. I'd imagine on circuits. I don't know how many guys were on the Under Armour circuit, which is what Bobby Mays' program plays on, but I'd imagine a few of them did. And some of these games are opportunities for these guys to kind of just to show that they belong. And so Huntley Hatfield, he showed some good things last night. That's a guy who last week was essentially written off. He played 2 minutes in a game. And you question, if Fulkerson's there, does he get those minutes? But the fact that he took advantage of his time means that there's probably more time coming. Same thing with Ziegler, although Ziegler's playing a lot as it is. Same thing with Uros. Can you find a rotation with Olivier, who was extremely aggressive last night? I'm glad he finally hit that 1-3 because it was a huge 3 too. Because I kind of saw a little social media stuff about people wondering why he's taking these shots. Well, they're wide open shots. That's why you're taking them. You can't just live in the post if you're 6'8". It's not going to work. Grant Williams hit a lot of mid-range jump shots. Not everything Grant Williams did was pounding in the paint and just wrestling with everybody. Not every game was the Vanderbilt game where he had like 40 points in the paint, basically. Like if you're at 6'8", he's gonna have to step out and show he can hit some of those shots. And I'm glad he hit that one towards the end. But like I said, to me, I can talk about every single person and what I saw them do positively and negatively on that team. Vescovi still reminds me that he is as good of a shooter as there is in the country. I don't care about the 3 of 8. But trust me, he's one of the best shooters in the country, and showed an aggression. I saw him, foul a kid on a rebound. He went up for the rebound and kind of knocked the kid down. And I'm like, the kid's like 6'8", 6'9", but yeah, I mean,
there's one point in the game where Vescovi and Nkamhoua were the team's leading rebounders, and technically, I guess Vescovi was until Uros passed him up at the end there, but he still finished the game with 6 boards, which is really impressive for him being a 6'3" guy.
I mean, Uros getting 9 and 19 minutes is impressive, man.
Yeah,
like that's again, those are impressive numbers, man. Like that, I'm like you, Nathanael. Like I'm going to focus more on the positive. Like, man, if so much of basketball, so much of how people talk about basketball nowadays gets locked in on the last 2 minutes. Like everything's like an NBA culture where we don't necessarily care about the 47 minutes and 45 seconds that leads up to the final play. We care about, did Jordan make the shot? Did Kobe make the shot? Did whatever make the shot? We have a whole culture of that. And man, like it can't simply be about that. Like this was a team who battled without 2 starters. Mm-hmm. And nearly won the game. And that's all I can focus on. Like the rest of the stuff, Bailey missed a shot. Like I'm just like I'm an offensive guy. Like when I coached, I was an offensive guy. You're gonna make shots, you're gonna miss shots. That's going to happen over the course of the game. Like what do you do? I mean, and the reality is not neither Bailey nor Powell really did anything to separate themselves from the other. And like last night would have been a great chance for Bailey to do so. And he didn't. He did some good things in the second half, but ultimately he didn't. And Powell, whatever he did in the first half, it did not translate. He played 11 minutes in the first half, 4 in the second. So Rick saw something that he didn't like in those 4 minutes because that kid did not get back on the point.
Yes, to that point, you were right earlier when you mentioned I was, while you were talking, looking for a transcript from Rick Barnes' post-game presser, so shout out to 247 Sports, the Go Vols 247, because they have it. I believe probably Grant Ramey did this, if I had to guess. Yeah, Grant did this. Someone asked him, late in the game, why Justin Powell was on the bench when Tennessee needed a 3, and instead of having Victor Bailey out there, and you were right about basically it being defense. Like you said, Barnes not liking what he saw. Here's pretty much the full quote from Barnes about this. We need Justin to want to really lock in defensively with everybody, and he's capable of doing it, but tonight he had some breakdowns on the defensive end. That's why we were taking him out. They're a team, talking about Alabama, that can get on a run. I told him we need him on the court. We really do, but he's got to understand he's got to play both ends of it, and he's more than capable. But we need him. We need him tonight. We're getting to this time of year where we've got a lot of respect for coaches in this league. They're going to go at guys if they don't think they can defend. We need Justin. We really do. We need him to want to do this, and he's shown he can. He just needs to be more consistent with it. So you were pretty much spot on, Gene, with why Barnes opted to go with Victor Bailey. I don't think Bailey's the most phenomenal defender, but he has improved on his defense every year he's been at Tennessee. And right now he is a better defender than Powell. And like you said, he's got more athleticism and quicker feet than what Powell does too. So that was the reasoning why. And I get where he's coming from. Alabama's offense really was starting to turn it on there in the final few minutes. I mean, we could just go back to the play-by-play. They're going back and forth with Tennessee late. And I talked about it in the matchup breakdown video I did, that Alabama coming into this game on Wednesday night had the third most points per game in the second half in the entire country. They were averaging just a little bit under 46 points per game in the second half. So they were more than capable of pouring points on in the second half. They ended this game with 40, which, under their season average, but still a pretty good total there in the second half. So I understand where Barnes is coming from, but that's why, we've been talking about this game, but I also, again, think moving forward, if I'm Justin Powell, man, you see this as an opportunity to say, hey, I need to go out there and earn more minutes. I'm going to do whatever I can to make sure I'm improving defensively, because his offense is there, Gene. I mean, he like you said, I agree with you. He's a better shooter than Bailey is. He's both not just as a three-point shooter, but overall he's got a better two-point shooting percentage, a better three-point shooting percentage than Bailey does right now. I think Bailey has a better free throw shooting percentage, but he also has attempted more. And I think that at least does show that Bailey's a good shooter, because he can at least make the free throws there. But I think his offense is there. I don't think he really needs to worry about that. He needs to worry about the defense, because defense is always going to show up. If your offense is off of the night, if you're a really good defensive team, like Tennessee is, you can stay in these types of games where your offense wasn't, the most crisp it could be against Alabama. Tennessee was still in it right there until the very end, because their defense, for the most part in that game, and same thing with Arizona, had done a good job of, affecting a really good offense. So if I'm Justin Powell, man, I see this as an opportunity to say, hey, Bailey is better than me defensively. I feel like I'm better than him offensively. How can I close that gap defensively and earn more minutes moving forward? And because you earn playing time on the practice court, and you got also what you do in games, which you have to prove to your coaches, both in basketball and football, really in any sport, that you can do these things in practice. You have to prove to them that you need to be out there and on the court, because, hey, look what I can do in practice. Look how I'm preparing. Because that's another thing that Rick Barnes mentioned later on in his post game comments when asked about Brandon Huntley Hatfield and why did his minutes go down in the second half. He said, I felt like and to go back to the Arizona game, he mentioned he didn't think Huntley Hatfield prepared at all very well at all that week for that game. He said, I think he'd even tell you that the two practices before that game, he did not have great preparation for that game. But he said before this one that he felt like, I thought Brandon did his best job preparing for a game this year before this one, and I thought he was really locked in. But then, just kind of like with Powell, the second half, defensively, he made some mistakes and didn't do things right, and that was why he didn't play. And also, it helped that Uros was, again, having his best game as a Vol so far. But that's, Gene, you were right about why Bailey was out there, and I think that's, like I said, if I'm Powell, if this isn't a wake-up call to Powell of, hey, there are minutes there for the taking for me, then I don't know what's going to wake him up, because if I'm him, again, I see my offense is better than Bailey, my defense is not. I'm going to work on the area where I'm not better than him and try to get better than him at it. And I think he's got to prove to Barnes that he is deserving of playing those late game minutes when you need more defense than offense. And unless there's a game where it's a back and forth contest and both teams are in the upper 80s and stuff like that, then maybe it's still a different story and Powell's out there more. Maybe kind of like Arizona, because we didn't see Bailey in that one very much. But I don't know. I think I want to see Rick Barnes play Powell more. And again, we talked about at the beginning of this conversation and kind of got away from it, but that's fine, because I thought you had some really good points in there, Gene. Well, that's my big takeaway from this game is, as you said, they fought their butts off, and that should be the big talking point of they're down two men. Your most talented player from a pure talent perspective in Kennedy Chandler, and then your oldest, most experienced, a guy who just coming off a 24-10 game in John Fulkerson, and they had a 10-point lead at one point. They led for a lot of that game. I think like 27, 28 minutes they led in that game and almost won on the road. But instead, we're talking about, a lot of the negatives because, as you kind of mentioned too, people love to focus in on the final 2 minutes of a game rather than the first 38.
Yeah, and maybe this is applicable, maybe it's not. Like my junior year of college, I just got settled in. I felt really confident about who I was as a basketball player at that point in my life. And so I thought that I had done enough to be the starter at my position. My coach instead brings me in off the bench the first 2 games. And so the first 2 games I played really, really well. I had high points. I think I averaged like 10 rebounds a game in the 2 games and like maybe 3 or 4 assists. So game 3 comes along. I'm like, I've done enough now. I don't start. I'm like, Coach, what's up? And he's like, your attention to detail in practice is not where I want it to be. And I'm like, what else can I do? And it's just one of those things, like Powell has to understand, and probably Huntley Hatfield applies too, like there's certain things that coaches are looking for in how you practice and how you prepare. And like we all see the game day stuff, but it's like when you have, like, we see the raw talent, but we don't see the preparations that go into like the game prep in terms of how are these guys getting themselves mentally prepared to play in a game. It's not just simply like defense isn't just simply guarding your man. Like, what are you doing when the ball is not in your hands? I'm sorry, when the ball's not right in front of you. That's, for a team like Tennessee, that's what's going to determine how much you actually play. Because all the help side stuff, all the cuts, what are you doing? Are you bumping? Like all those little things, all those little basketball terms, that stuff does matter. And look, we can all just sit there and watch a game, watch Justin Powell make shots, or watch Victor Bailey miss shots and say, that kid should be playing over the other kid. But there's also, there's also the whole, what are they doing on the other end of the court? You can't simply base it off rebounds or like the counting stats. Like, you can't base it off the counting stats because, and as basketball fans have gotten smarter, like so many people slobbered over Russell Westbrook's triple-double season. That guy could probably average a triple-double again this year and nobody would care. Because you start to understand, oh, well, those don't really matter. Like scoring 19 points, grabbing 15 rebounds, and passing and getting 12 assists just means the ball's in your hand a lot. Doesn't necessarily mean that you're making good decisions when you've got the ball in your hand. Like I said, I can't stop talking about Uros. Uros didn't make a shot. But you notice everything that he did out there, not simply because he's 7'2", or whatever he is. You notice it because he was impacting the game, which is why, again, like plus minus isn't an exact science. But he had the highest plus minus on the team, and he played 19 minutes. Olivier, you saw Olivier doing everything on the court. You saw Olivier's 15 points. Tennessee was 11 points worse when he played. In a game, they lost by 5. So they were 6 points. I think if I got this right, they were 6 points better when he did not play. He only didn't play 7 minutes. So, like the thing with Powell, because it's not perfect, but like if you don't lock in on that other side, how this coaching staff wants you to, and look, Barnes is a stickler for the defensive side.
Yep.
Always has been. That's kind of his calling card. That's kind of what he does. Like if you're not taking care of what you need to take care of on that side, it's going to be hard for you to get on the court, man, especially as a perimeter player. Bigs like Uros got it easy. I don't want to say easy, but a lot of teams. Now Bama's different because Bama runs with like 5 guards essentially, of different sizes, of course, but basically like 5 guards. Like they had number 4, that's a big guy. Bediako, that's a big guy.
Mm-hmm.
But Bediako played 12 minutes and Juwan Gary played 20, which means they went with Davidson, Shackelford, Quinterly, Gurley. Obviously, people know him, and Keon Ellis last night. That was their lineup for the majority of the game. I told y'all, by the way, we talked about this and thing. Told you Noah Gurley was going to be a good player.
Yeah, he'd had a slow start, but man, he had his game of the season so far for him against Tennessee, 20-10.
Now he ain't out there to pass, but
right, yeah. he played exceptionally well in that game.
But like that's a smaller lineup. When Gurley's your biggest player, look, Gurley's like 6'8". I think Gurley's 6'8", maybe 6'9", kind of a stretch 4, bigger 3 type guy. If you want to delve into positions or whatever you want to call it. But last time I checked, Shackelford's not big, Quinterly's not big, Ellis is 6'6", Gurley's 6'8", and Davidson's a point guard. So like that's not a big lineup, and so that's a game where you need Bailey or Powell to step up because you kind of have to. That's why Uros only played 19 minutes and he had 9 rebounds. Ain't nobody 7'2" out there. He's more physical now. He's going to grab a lot of rebounds. But he was important out there. But you're talking about some minutes where you had that were available for somebody. One of the two. He went with Bailey because Bailey kind of understands where to be. Now, apparently he likes to foul. That's kind of is what it is. Vescovi knows where to be. Not always great on the ball, but he knows where to be. And that's a big part of succeeding in this sport is do you just know where to be defensively? Because that'll get you a lot of playing time, man. That will just knowing where to be on that side of the court. That's what coaches are going to notice. Like when you start getting lost, you have missed assignments all the time, and you don't know where to be, and you're just gone and doing your own thing, it's harder to play you. And that's what when Powell, like when he figures out what is being asked of him, he's going to be fine. But he's a second-year freshman, so you do kind of get that. What's Bailey, like a 5th or 6th year guy?
Bailey is a 5th year guy, I think.
5th year junior, I think he is, because he played 2 years at Oregon, sat a year, played last year. So yeah, he's a 5th year junior. Yep. That's a guy that's been through a lot. That's 3 years of experience that Powell doesn't have. He'll get there, but obviously nights like last night kind of remind people he still has a ways to go.
Yeah, he's a second-year guy, but he also, again, only played 10 games in the COVID year. So
exactly.
He's by all accounts, he's still kind of a freshman in a lot of ways. So yeah, you're absolutely right about that. I don't think this really changes too much how I feel about this team. That was a frustrating loss because the game was right there for the taking, and you couldn't take it. But also, Alabama's a good team, and that was on their home court where they've won like some ungodly number, like 17 straight games at home, or at least conference games at home, or something like that. They've got some really strong winning streak at home. They play really well there, and of course Tennessee, like I said, historically has not been very good at Coleman Coliseum or just Tuscaloosa in general against Alabama. So I think a lot of people want to focus on negatives of this game because it was very winnable. But this doesn't change much how I feel about this team. Again, they were down 2 guys. If Fulkerson and Kennedy Chandler were in there, how different does that game play out? Is Bailey even on the court in the final 2 minutes? Because I don't think he is. Because I think you have Fulkerson, I think you have Chandler, I think you have Vescovi, and I think you have Josiah Jordan James. But that fourth guy could be Nkamhoua, it could be Powell, it could be Sakai Ziegler. It probably was Ziegler because that's been the thing we've seen a lot. The 4-guard, 1-1 forward lineup late in games to Tennessee. That's so again, I don't think we'll be seeing too much of Victor Bailey Jr. late in games moving forward. And this the way COVID's going right now. I feel like someone said this to me on Twitter, and I kind of agree with them. Almost every team this year is possibly going to lose a game because of COVID, because you're going to have guys out because of COVID. It's only a matter of time probably before Alabama has a couple of guys out because of COVID, and they're having to play shorthanded against the team. But Tennessee still wanted to play the game, and they threw some not so subtle shade towards Memphis on some of their tweets and stuff, which I thought was pretty funny. And shout out to Memphis for losing to Tulane, by the way, on Wednesday night. No, I think it was a good point by whoever tweeted that at me. I mean, the way COVID's going, this wouldn't even shock me if this isn't the only game Tennessee has a couple guys out. In SEC play, or if Tennessee has to have a game or two, postponed or rescheduled moving forward because of COVID, whether it's on their program or the other team's program. So that's just also, is what it is right now. Things are getting. I'm glad we're moving away from the cancellation and more towards the postponement or rescheduling, especially now that we're in conference play. I think it makes more sense to do that. It's a little different with non-conference games and canceling those and everything because it's hard to reschedule once you get into conference play, some non-conference games. But SEC-wise, I'm glad that's the case. But I also want to bring up, Gene, that losing this game, as I said, doesn't change how much I really feel about this team moving forward. I don't think it should really affect how fans view the rest of the season. Tennessee has a tough stretch here to open the conference play. They host Ole Miss, which that game's going to be ugly, I think, especially if Fulkerson and Chandler aren't back for Tennessee for that game, which they should be because that game's another week away, basically. It's Wednesday, January 5th, so it's a whole week away from now. But you have Ole Miss, LSU, South Carolina, Kentucky as your next few games, then Vandy and LSU. So, I mean, you've got some tough games moving forward for Tennessee. But Tennessee's not been great under Rick Barnes in the first game, SEC game, to open up the year, which is weird to me. I think they're now like 3-4 under Barnes. And I look back to that team, Gene, that won a share of the regular season SEC title. They started the season 0-2 in SEC play. They entered like a 9-2 in non-conference play. They had that close loss to North Carolina. They had that game where they were up, I think, pretty big at one point against Villanova and lost, but they won in overtime against Purdue and had some good showings against some other non-conference teams that year. It came into SEC play, I think, ranked and looking to make some noise. Then they lose in a high-scoring affair, I think maybe multiple overtime game against Arkansas, and then you lose at home to Bruce Pearl and Auburn, and then you're about to face Kentucky, and fans are thinking, oh God, Tennessee's going to start 0-3 in SEC play, beat Kentucky, and then go on to, again, win a share of the SEC regular season title and finish the year 13-5. So they started 0-2 in SEC play that year, and then finished, closed out 13-3 basically. So I don't, just because Tennessee loses this game and starts at 0-1 in SEC play, I don't know that I would panic too much. Tennessee doesn't have an easy road ahead, but I think it gets a little bit easier after you get out of January. Tennessee's, in my opinion, their SEC slate gets a little bit easier because you look at what they have in February. After they play Texas, they open up in February 1st against Texas A&M, South Carolina, Mississippi State, Vanderbilt, home against Kentucky, at Arkansas, at Missouri versus Auburn, at Georgia versus Arkansas. And I don't know that Arkansas. I know they were without J.D. Notae in that game against Mississippi State, but they did not look good. So I don't know if they're going to be as good this year, nearly as good as this year as they were last year. But those are some much more winnable games. You got Missouri and Georgia on tap there, and Vandy for you, and Texas A&M and South Carolina on tap for you in February and early March. So Tennessee has a chance to, after this rough first basically 9 games or so of the SEC schedule, to go kind of finish out a little bit stronger in the last 9 games. So, Gene, kind of closing out here, I'm not really panicked about this. It was a frustrating loss for Tennessee because they had every opportunity to win that game, even shorthanded. But again, this COVID year, it's another COVID year, not to the same extent as last year, but it's basically another COVID year because it's wreaking havoc on scheduling and who is and isn't available and everything right now. It's going to be another tough year to really gauge kind of here once we're getting into January and stuff, but I'm not hitting the panic button. I think this is still a really good team. I think it's still a team that's going to finish top 4 in the SEC and still be in a really good spot heading into postseason play.
Yeah, I think, look, man, I'm a firm proponent that every basketball game you play matters.
Yep.
It has a tangential, I think that's the word, value. It's important, but I also understand that the reason why it's important isn't necessarily, to me, the reason why every game is important isn't necessarily because you need some title or you need some accomplishment or award. It's because everything that you're doing is trying to build your team up for March. So, like, to me, I don't care if I'm obviously alone when I say this, and I'm being completely I'm just saying this just to be funny. I don't care if Tennessee goes 0-18 in the SEC because they have different guys out, or if they go 5-13 in the SEC. But those last 7 or 8 games, they finally get their full complement of players and they figure something out. Maybe they lose a game regardless, but they've got their full complement. That's a team who goes into the NCAA tournament, provided they can get there, like 18-13. But they're going to be a team that nobody wants to face because, when Tennessee figured it out, they were scary good. To me, I'm watching this and I'm like, look, they lost the game, man. I get it. I understand the frustration. It's Bama. It feels like Tennessee hasn't beat Bama in anything in quite some time. I get it. I 1,000% understand people's angst and people's frustration that they lost the game. But Victor Bailey did not lose that game for anybody. I don't think it's fair to put all of that on that kid who, look, we can argue about how important he is to this team and how much he should or shouldn't play. Everybody can have that discussion. But, the biggest reason they lost that game that we've talked about multiple times today, they were missing their starting point guard and their most valuable player. Mm-hmm. Those are 2 big losses. And like I said, those are games that you kind of want to have Chandler out there, just mainly because I think it will be a fun matchup between him and Davison. I think it would be. And, him and Alabama's guards. You want to see that sort of stuff. From an entertainment value, you want to see that stuff. To me, again, I'm mostly about, do you win or you lose? How did you look? Tennessee looked good. And they look good without 2 players. This isn't football. I'm not judging you. I'm not living off of this one game until next Saturday. This is a game they had every opportunity to win down the stretch. In the final minute of the game, they're leading on the road. Minus 2 players. That matters to me. And it should matter to a lot of people that this is a team that battled. And yes, I get it. He missed a shot. It happens. It happens. What's the conversation if Powell's in there and Powell misses the exact same shot?
Right. It's you're not talking about this. We're just talking about, wow, this team can't hit threes. Basically, it's a team conversation.
So that's why I can't put it all. I understand there's frustration and this guy should be playing, that guy should be playing. Man, the conversation. Why is Powell out there? Bailey hit a 3 in the second half. Powell didn't hit anything. Why is he even playing? It's amazing how we can't live off of one shot. The bigger picture is that's a team last night that battled. That's a team last night that fought. That's a team that had every opportunity to win a game, to steal a game on the road without 2 players. So to me, you add those 2 players and you keep playing with that same effort and energy and toughness, you're going to win a lot of games. That's the bigger picture. That's the macro part of the conversation. How did this team look? This team looked good. Were they perfect? No. But you don't play perfect basketball games. You don't play perfect in sports. There are always going to be mistakes and different things that happen along the way. But did you play well enough to win? And the answer to that question is yes. Without a doubt, the answer to that question is yes. They played well enough to win the game. So going forward, what can we improve on? Is it rotations? They don't play again for a week. So what can we do over the next week that if we don't have Chandler, if we don't have Fulkerson, we can put ourselves in the best position to win a game? Because Ole Miss ain't nothing to write home about. Home, if that game is in Knoxville, if it's in Oxford, if it's in Nashville, I don't care where it is. I expect Tennessee to win that game.
Yeah, Ole Miss is pretty good defensively, but their offense is not good. That's why I say it's gonna be ugly, because I don't know. Tennessee's offense is hit or miss this year. It's better at home, but that game could be a low-scoring game.
Yeah, and whether you win 92-89 or 68-64.
Mm-hmm.
You take the win, you figure out where you were good at, you continue to start developing an identity for this team, because as we can look and see, if you kind of look at some of the game by game stuff, all that jack and three stuff that we were talking about a few weeks ago that I said wasn't going to last, guess what? It ain't lasting. Now, they didn't shoot well last night from three, but they're at least attempting to do more things. I mean, like UNC Greensboro, they jacked a ton of threes. They shot 37%. That's a good percentage. 35 out of 64 shots were threes. But since then, UNC Upstate, they started trying to get the ball, get into the paint a little bit more often. Arizona, 24 threes on 67 shots. Last night, minus 2 players, 29 threes on 63 shots. And there weren't a ton of bad shots. And like that's the stuff to me that matters. Like, are you taking bad? Are you just attempting bad threes? I thought early in the season they were attempting bad threes. They were just, whatever is contested, I'll just step another foot back and just shoot it, to where it's not as contested, but now it's a worse shot. Like, and they were making a good percentage. So I guess in your mind, you're like, well, man, we hit over 40% in 3 of our first 4 games. We must be a good 3-point shooting team. And you weren't trying to figure out other ways that you could be good. Like, they have the chance to be pretty good in terms of just, with what they have in the interior. Probably better than what any of us thought, myself included. I knew Fulkerson was going to be a good piece, but we talked numerous times before, is there going to be another guy that steps up? Well, it looks to me, Olivier had probably one of his best games last night.
Yep. I would agree.
I mean, I understand he scored more points in games. I understand he's grabbed more rebounds in games. But I don't recall Olivier going for 15 and 9 against anybody tangible. Again, maybe I'm wrong. I just don't remember better. But I'm looking now. Villanova, no points, 6 rebounds. North Carolina, 7.6 rebounds. Colorado, 3.5 rebounds. Texas Tech, 2.3 rebounds. Arizona, 2.7 rebounds. Like, that's who you are as a player. What you do in the games against the teams that are equally as talented as you. That's what you are as a player. So for him going for 15 and 9 last night, that is huge. That's a guy who can help you out, because he also did that without John Fulkerson. Jacked a bunch of shots. It is what it is. But, then you got Uros, who's shown he could be a pretty valuable option. And once he starts finishing shots inside, he's got a good stroke. He can hit shots. When I was talking to a coach who told me that Uros' player comparison is Jason Smith, and then I saw some Jason Smith tape. I can't remember exactly where I think Jason Smith played at Colorado, played in the NBA for a number of years. When you start looking, okay, that guy's more of a face-up guy. Okay, I get that. Now you can see, I kind of understand the comparison, because he does have a good stroke. And then it's about 6 of 8 from the free throw line. Huntley Hatfield, when that kid figures it out, watch out. When he's bought in, watch out. I'll remain steadfast on that. Whatever it is, whenever that kid figures it out, he had a wide open 3 at the top of the key. I thought he was going to shoot. No. Passed it. Cut. Oh, okay. Got it. I got it. AAU Huntley Hatfield would have jacked that thing. Had a good chance of making it too. But what I look at is I've finished my lengthy soliloquy is I think that this team is capable of being good on the interior to where they don't have to shoot a whole bunch of threes. But if the quality of shots continues to improve, the fact that they have guys who can hit shots will only open things up for the interior. And as they open things up on the interior, that's going to open up, some shooting, some good shooting opportunities for some of those shooters they've got.
Well said. And we could talk more and more about this, because I think there's just a lot of things to break down in this game. I don't think Alabama played particularly well, especially J.D. Davison giving the ball away 8 times. There are just mistakes that Bama made in this game. That's why I said that the game was right there for the taking, and it wasn't just because of Tennessee's effort. I didn't think Alabama played particularly crisp game either. But it is what it is, and again, we will have a lot more to talk about moving forward. This is one of 18 SEC games. We got 17 more of these to go, and Tennessee's game against Texas to go. and then we'll get into March and the SEC tournament and then the NCAA tournament. So we've got a long road ahead of us, Gene. Of course, people love to talk about and overreact to the first game. This wasn't the first game; it's the first SEC game. So obviously a lot of conversation spent on this one. But again, I'm not hitting the panic button. I think this is still a good team, and I am looking forward to seeing how things play out when Tennessee faces. Again, I like you. I think Tennessee will beat Ole Miss. But how do they handle things against LSU? How do they handle things against Kentucky here in a couple weeks? But again, as I mentioned, top of the show, this is the last episode that Gene and I will be doing in 2021. So, Gene, I want to wish you a happy New Year, a happy 2022, because I know you got a lot on your plate and you got a lot of stuff you're doing. So I'm hoping 2022 is a little less busy and stressful for you. But man, I hope you continue to have great blessings and you and your family both in the new year.
And same to you, Nathanael. Obviously, I mean, we do this because we enjoy it. I mean, the timing, doesn't really matter. Like, I'm always a person. If you're going to give me a chance to talk ball, I'm going to talk ball. I may get nerdy about it sometimes with people and throw out some stuff that some terminology that some people don't know. But like, this is what I love. Basketball is what I love, and so obviously, I always am thankful for an opportunity to do it. And so I'm so thankful to you, Nathanael, for kind of giving me the platform, give me the opportunity. And to all to everybody who has listened, said it last week, I can't say it enough. Thank you all for supporting what we do. It may sound weird at times, and obviously we all jump off on our little tangents and different things, but I mean, I think that's why you do this. This is sometimes you have a platform to kind of just speak speak how you feel about certain things. And so yeah, I mean, like, Nathanael, again, I know, I'm not the only busy one here. We work it out weekly. We always give people a pod to listen to week in, week out. I think that's important. And, I think we don't have I think what makes us unique is the fact that we're not trying to come at it from some sort of insider perspective. We're just like Nathanael, you're a fan. I'm just a basketball guy. We're different in that regard. We're not coming at it from the perspective of we've got all this insider knowledge of why something's happening the way it's happening. The reason, it's basketball. The reason why you won is because you made shots and you did things well defensively. A lot of times when you lose, it's because you either didn't make shots or you didn't do certain things defensively, and sometimes a combination of both. It's that simple to me. And so, like I said, as we wrap this thing up, we're not going to talk to y'all again until next year. I hope you all can manage for however long that is, because next year seems like it's such a long way away. But again, like I said, Nathanael, I appreciate you for creating this platform. Whoever we've got on here, Nathanael's done such a great job. I've actually met Cora Hall earlier this week for the first time. I've known Maria for a number of years. Those are two great people, two great voices. Whoever it is, like he's got on this podcast, give them a listen, because that's a person who knows what they're talking about. And so, except for me sometimes, but again, I said, we appreciate you all. I said, Nathanael, I can't thank you enough. And again, until next time, man, we certainly appreciate everything that you all have done to kind of support us.
Gene, I couldn't have said it better myself. Man, I appreciate you a whole lot. I love talking about I've mentioned before, you were the first person I thought of when I thought of doing just a pure basketball podcast back when it was the SEC Basketball Fever, but still, you're the first person I thought of because I always really enjoyed your analysis and take on college basketball, so I wanted you on here. I'm very glad you have carved out time over the year, I guess year plus now, to do this with me. Again, thank you all so much for all of you listening, because we wouldn't have this. I mean, I would probably still do this even with minimal to no one listening, but you all have helped this kind of grow and be something that I'm happy to come back to and do every week and multiple times a week a lot of times too. So thank you all so much for your support, for subscribing, for commenting, for sharing it with friends, family, and helping us kind of grow here in 2021. And I'm very excited to see how the podcast and the YouTube channel and everything grow in 2022. But thank you all again so much. Signing off for Gene, I'm Nathanael. This has been another episode of the Vol Basketball Fever Podcast. Thank you for listening to the Vol Basketball Fever podcast. Subscribe to the show so you'll never miss another episode.